Hey guys, today I'll be doing the maintenance on the EMT16X. I'll be doing the daily, weekly, and monthly maintenance processes. For the yearly, I'll be saving that for another video because it is in depth. The reason I'm doing this is because I did buy this machine used and I don't know how well the previous owner took care of the machine. So this way I can make sure I have everything up to date and it's in tip-top shape. For the maintenance that you need to do, it's pretty simple. Melco does a fantastic job by breaking this down on their user interface. They have a bunch of pictures as well as a step-by-step process with a bunch of warnings to make sure you don't mess anything up. Like I said, it's very easy, but it does take a little bit of time. So with that being said, let's jump into it. All right, so here's everything you're gonna need for your daily, weekly, and monthly maintenance. Everything's gonna be found in your machine operator's kit, so make sure when you're done, put everything back there for next time as well. The first thing that you're gonna need is your oiling pin. This is needed in a couple steps. It's very important to make sure that everything is lubricated and running smoothly. Next thing we have is our Allen wrench set. This is gonna have all the different sizes. We're not gonna use all of them, but it's nice to have everything together as a little set. The next tool we have here is just a flathead screwdriver. This is one of those tools that I don't use too often, but when I do need it, it's nice to have, so I keep it right next to my machine. The next thing we'll need is our red grease as well as an applicator stick that comes with the set. There is also a yellow grease that we use for the yearly maintenance, so make sure not to get these mixed up. For our processes, we're going to be using just the red. And finally, we do have an X cable tension gauge. This is going to be used to make sure that the cable is tight and not too tight or too loose. One thing that isn't a tool that I just keep handy are just a couple rags or cutoffs of t-shirts that I use to clean the machine as I'm going through this to get rid of any of the grease or any dust that's just sitting there. With all that ready, let's go ahead and go to the machine and we'll start with the daily maintenance. All right guys, so the first one we're doing here is going to be the daily maintenance. You should be doing this daily to your bobbin to make sure that it runs smoothly and you're not having issues with thread breaks. This process is pretty straightforward. For this, we're gonna really only need our oil pin as well as a way to blow out any dust that's stuck inside. I have a little compressor next to my machine, but if you have an air can, that also works as well. So first thing we're gonna wanna do is go ahead and pop out the bobbin casing by pulling this tab and then pulling the casing out. And we can just set that on the side for now. Next thing we're gonna wanna do is blow out the inside of this. So you see all the little threads that are stuck down here. Just go ahead and blow this down. Go ahead and blow that out as best you can to make sure you get as much of the debris out as possible. So last thing we're gonna be doing here is on this bottom left side, inside the ridge, I'm gonna be dropping a single drop of oil, and that's gonna make sure everything is lubricated and runs smoothly so you don't have any thread breaks or any issues with that. That was a little bit bigger of an oil drop than I wanted to put, but that's gonna work. Essentially, it's gonna drip down here. So once you get the oil in there, we're gonna go ahead and put the bobbin casing back, click it in. So there you go, that's how we do the daily maintenance on the bobbin. Next step, we're gonna be doing the weekly maintenance, so let's go ahead and do that. For the weekly maintenance, the first thing we're gonna have to do is remove any, if you have the arms or if you have the cap driver on, we're gonna have to take that off because the machine does move. So it does advise that you wanna get these taken off first so you don't cause any damage. All right, and I'm just gonna set that off to the side here. All right, so once you have that off, the next step you have to be in the OS program. So when you're going through, it does walk you through here. It's pretty straightforward, but when you hit next, it's gonna tell you to drop oil into this specific location. It's also gonna shift the needles over here to the right so you have access to it. And the spot that you put the oil is right there. And what they say to do is to go ahead and drop in 25 drops of oil into this little circular spot and then let it sit for 10 minutes. Once that's done, you'll go ahead and hit next on the machine. But for now, let's go ahead and drop the oil in. And like I said, let it sit for 10 minutes before you hit the next button. So I'll bring you guys back after 10 minutes. All right, so we're back now. It's been 10 minutes, so I'm gonna take you guys over here and we're gonna go ahead and hit next. And what that's gonna tell you to do is to wipe this V rail, which is right here, in the shape of a V, which is where it got its name, of course. So you're gonna wanna wipe it down as far as you can get on both the inside of the rail as well as the outside. And then once you're done with that, put a drop on both inside and outside and hit next, and it'll have you do the same thing onto the other side. All right, so we just hit next, and now, like I said, same thing on this side. Cool, so once we're done with the V-rails, what we're gonna do next is essentially oil the needle bars from these little holes here. They're kind of hard to see, so I'm gonna do my best to film, but essentially there's a single bar for each needle that you can access through these holes. Each one will need a single drop of oil to be placed on them, and then once we do that, we'll move up top and I'll bring you guys there. But I'm gonna try my best to see if I can capture this so you can see exactly what you need to oil. So it's a little hard to see, but if I bring a light behind, you can kind of see the poles that we're aiming for. Here on 11 and 10, you can see the poles behind that hole. I'm going to do my best to show you guys on 10 and 11, but essentially there's a bar right here. And what I like to do is set the needle into the hole, get a drop of oil onto the tip ready, and then just push it forward until it hits. Once you know what you're trying to oil, it's a lot easier. So go ahead and do that for 1 through 16. Then I'll bring you guys up and we're going to do it again, but it's a little bit easier to see up top. All right, so after we get the bottom parts oiled, we're going to be oiling the top. And essentially what we're looking to oil, the best way to show you, are these little silver rods in the back. And again, each one has one of these. So you'll be oiling it, again, 16 times. But you can easily access this through these gaps right here. And I do essentially the same thing where I get my oil pin, get a drop of oil ready, and then tap that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll bring you guys back. So we're done here. I'm gonna go hit next and then take you guys on to the next step. All right, for this step, we're removing the needle plate cover and then we're gonna be removing the link cover. To do that, we're gonna be using our 2.5-inch Allen wrench to remove these two bolts, one on either side, that hold this plate down. First, I'm gonna remove this one. And then once we have that, I'll be removing the other side. And like that, the needle head, the needle plate cover should be removed as easy as that. Once we're there, simply remove the link cover by lifting up. And then you'll have a bunch of extra dust back here. With the same either air compressor or can of spray, you're gonna wanna go ahead and blow all this area out. So once we're done there, we can put these pieces back in reverse. This is held on with just 2 magnets, so it gets placed on. Before we put the needle plate on though, we wanna go ahead and oil it right above where this little black rivet is, with just a single drop of oil. And then with an Allen key, you can move the knife back and forth about 10 times just to kind of spread the oil around. Once we have it cleaned out and oiled, we can go ahead and put this back as well. And when you are putting this back on, you don't want to go too tight, as we're going to have to make an adjustment here to make sure that the needle plate is centered. So to make sure we get this needle plate lined up properly, we're going to go ahead and hit the E-stop after we hit the next step and it tells us to. So press that. And once we do, we'll have access to move these motors without any binding or any issues. So underneath here, we can reach the Z shaft, which is this silver shaft right here, and essentially rotate it to move the needle up and down, as you can see on this side. What we're gonna do is move the needle down to as low as possible. Once we have the needle down all the way, we're gonna wanna make sure the needle plate is centered from left to right and it doesn't hit the needle or get in the way. And when it is perfectly aligned, you can go ahead and retighten down the Allen screws on the back to make sure it doesn't shift. All right, and once you have that centered up, we can go ahead and release the E-stop, which will bring the needle back up, like so, and then we're done with the weekly maintenance and we can move on to the monthly. The monthly maintenance is a little bit more involved than the other steps that we've done so far. It does involve taking off a ton of different components. Firstly, we're going to start off by taking these end caps off. This is going to be the same for either side, so I'm just going to show you the right side for the sake of time. But essentially, we're going to be removing all this grease that's in here. This is the red grease that you can see inside here. And we're going to be reapplying that with the wooden stick that comes in your tool set. The one thing you're going to want to do is make sure you're using a lint-free clean rag when you're wiping off this grease, because you don't want any other contaminants in there. So we're going to go ahead and get that cleaned up and then reapply it. All right, so like I said, you're gonna wanna remove as much as you can. Once you do, we're gonna be taking this wooden stick that comes in your set, getting the tip with a little bit of grease and essentially filling this channel back up, so when it does slide back and forth, it is as smooth as possible. And like so, we are done over here. Now there should all just be new grease in here. With that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and quickly knock out the other side. When I hit next, the rail is going to slide over like so. So make sure you have everything out of the way when it slides over. And then now I can go ahead and do the same process on the other side. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that off camera and then bring you guys back when I'm on to the next step. I'm done with the left side here. Once you hit next, the machine's gonna readjust. After it does that, I like to unlock the casters and pull the machine away from the wall, because essentially what we're gonna be doing next is removing these two covers here and here. Starting on this side, there are 3 little screws here that you remove with your 3mm Allen wrench, as well as an additional screw that's hiding here. So I'm gonna get those undone, get the cover taken off, and then I'll bring you guys back. All right guys, so we have the cover off. Next thing we're gonna wanna do is grab our oiling pen and then find this hole on the block here. Essentially, we're gonna be putting 25 drops of oil here. If it does fill up, which it will, you're gonna wanna head and wait, let the oil disperse into the block and then continue filling up. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Again, we're gonna be repeating on the other side once we get there, but let's do this side first. All right, so once you get the block oiled up, we're ready to go ahead and put the cover back on. One thing I'm gonna point out is that there are 4 screws, 3 of which are the same size, and then 1 that is a little bit longer than the rest. This longer one goes on the back on the outside. So for here, this goes on the back right. On the other side, it's gonna go on the back left. But with that being said, you simply just place this back on and we'll get everything screwed back up. Off camera, I went ahead and removed this cover and oiled the block. It's the same as the other side, 25 drops of oil in here. If it does start to overflow, let it sit for a second and then continue. And the next thing we're gonna need is the X cable tension gauge. This is what we're gonna use to test the X cable to make sure it's not too loose and it's not too tight. To test it, we're gonna go ahead and put the gauge behind the cable with the cable going between these 2 little nubs and place the cable underneath this tab right there. And the best way to check is simply looking at this cutout. If this cable is within that larger cutout, then that means we're good to go and we're in spec. If not, if it's too high or it's too low, you'll go ahead and select that on the user interface and it'll walk you through the settings to tighten this or loosen this as you need. I'm not gonna cover that in this video, but I'm gonna go on to the next step, which is remembering to take this off, then get everything put back and reassembled. All right, so I've went ahead and got both covers put back on. For this next step, we're gonna be greasing a part in the back. It's gonna be a little bit difficult to show, but I'm gonna try my best here and get you guys on this tripod and zoomed in. So what we're gonna be doing is moving this little tiny piece that's right next to this black bit that is on top of the bronze chrome piece, moving that over to the left and greasing in between, making sure not to get any grease on the gears or anything that isn't supposed to have grease on it. Again, it'll be a little bit difficult to see, but this piece right here, get that moved out of the way and then just put your little dab of grease on there like so, and just simply let that go and that's good to go. So once we get that greased up, we're good to go on the monthly maintenance. This is one of the videos that's more for education than entertainment. So if you enjoyed the video, let me know, or hopefully you got some insight on how to do the maintenance on the EMT16X. It's very similar to the Bravo. There are a couple different steps that are different, like cleaning out the cutter, because the Bravo doesn't have the cutter system. So if you're not doing your maintenance, you definitely should be doing your maintenance. Just make sure your machine runs as smooth as possible. It's very easy, like I said, it's just a bit time consuming. And Melco did a great job of putting a tutorial and a walkthrough step-by-step on their user interface, and as well as reminders of when you should do them. With that being said, I'm going to cut the video here. So thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day. Take care.